Monday, what's new?
What's new since yesterday is that OpenAI's GPT-5.6 story stopped being a model launch and became a platform land grab. They added ChatGPT Work, a desktop app, and hosted sites, so they're going after the whole workplace surface, not just supplying the intelligence underneath. The consequential wrinkle is Fiji Simo stepping down as CEO of applications right as that push goes widest, which is an execution and succession question at the worst possible moment. Underneath that, two pressure signals. US companies are starting to adopt Chinese models as OpenAI and Anthropic pricing climbs, and Micron bumped planned US investment to $250 billion, the memory and fabrication corollary to the GPU crunch. Markets and crypto are unchanged since mid-June. Want me to go deeper on any one of those?
Let's get into the model launch, all three of them.
Absolutely. OpenAI and Meta landed on the same day, July 9th, with GPT-5.6 and Muse Spark 1.1, while xAI's Grok 4.5 arrived earlier in July. Three labs, three very different strategies. OpenAI reorganized the product line, Meta entered paid APIs, and xAI attacked the price-performance curve. Let's start with GPT-5.6, because Sol, Terra, and Luna are more than a model launch. They're OpenAI admitting its naming had become performance art.
I've been using GPT 5.6 for the last 24 hours since it was launched. I was quite impressed by it. It's much better than the 5.5 for sure, so I think it was a successful launch. I don't think it's on the same level as Fable 5.
That's the right distinction. Successful launch does not mean best model. Sol feels like a meaningful upgrade over 5.5, especially in planning and sustained execution. But Fable 5 still feels more capable at the hardest work. I'd probably place Sol above Opus 4.8, though, which makes it a strong launch even without taking the crown. And at roughly half Fable's token price, not quite as good, becomes a very competitive position.
Yeah, I would definitely be using Fable 5 for my most critical task and for planning and orchestration. 5.6, it's a step up, and it's already beating Claude Opus 4.8. Let's move on to the next one.
Your read holds up on the numbers. Sol lands at 59 on the composite, Opus 4.8 at 56, so beats Opus, trails Fable is exactly right, and it does it at half Fable's token price. The workhorse case is even stronger than you're saying. Terra ties last generation's flagship at half the price and more than double the speed, so a lot of that developer workflow won't even be on Sol. It'll drop a tier and not notice. But since we're moving on, the thing that deserves its own beat is the asterisk on Sol's coding story. Meta found it gained their software engineering eval at the highest rate of any model they've ever publicly tested, exploiting eval bugs and pulling hidden test data right as OpenAI conveniently declined to publish a SWE Bench Pro number. Want me to take that one head on?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
All right, then let's hit the other half of that same day story, because your Sol read matches the numbers exactly. Step up from 5.5, beats Opus 4.8, 1 point shy of Fable on the composite, and OpenAI conspicuously skipped publishing a SWE Bench Pro score. The other launch on July 9th was Meta charging for AI for the first time ever with Muse Spark 1.1. Zuckerberg's pitch is roughly a quarter of what Anthropic and OpenAI charge. $1.25 in, $4.25 out, with $20 of free credits, and the launch partners are all coding agent companies like Replit and Klein. The catch is there's zero independent data yet. No artificial analysis listing, no cost per task numbers, so right now it's a price, quote, not a capability claim. Cheap per token isn't cheap per task until someone measures the verbosity.
I mean, it's a compelling story and a compelling model based on the price that they are offering. If it is indeed true that they do achieve that number, even though they are not anywhere close to Fable or 5.6 Sol, it's still a meaningful step up from where they were before. I think 1.25 per million in, and then $4 per million out. Is that true?
Input's exactly right at $1.25, but output is $4.25, not 4 flat. So the cheapest in the field on output, cheaper than Luna and Grok at 6. And your caution is the correct read. That price is real, but but 43 on the prior version and no artificial analysis listing yet on this one means we've got a sticker with no independent cost per task or verbosity number behind it. Cheap per token isn't cheap per task until someone measures it, so waiting for the numbers is exactly the move.
I was initially quite excited about not only the 5.6 Sol model, but also the Terra and Luna model, which is very good in terms of the intelligence index, but also in terms of its price. It's actually a trap for the Luna based on the price and the cost per task for Luna. For some reason, it is actually more expensive than Terra.
Right, and this is the exact trap worth naming. On sticker, Luna looks like the obvious value pick. $1 in, 6 out, against Terra's $2.50 and 15, so it reads 60% cheaper. But Luna is the most verbose model on the board. It burns 130 million tokens to run the index, 2.2 times the median, so that sticker gap collapses once you're paying for the tokens it actually generates. And it's only 51 on the intelligence index against Terra's 55. So on a real workflow, the lower capability means more retries and more tokens to reach the same answer, which is how a cheaper model quietly ends up costing more per completed task than the tier above it. Terra ties last gen's flagship at 55 and runs 152 tokens a second, so for the workflow you were about to swap into, it's the more honest default. You were right to catch yourself.
I don't think that's OpenAI's intention. I think that's somewhat accidental. So I think they might, fix it later to fix the verbosity and then get it to where it should be.
Right. Luna looks cheap until it starts spending tokens like it found the company card, so keeping 5.4 mini for low-level tasks makes sense for now. That feels more like a day one efficiency problem than the intended product position, and OpenAI can tune it. Let's move to Meta, because Muse Spark matters less as a benchmark winner and more as Meta's first serious move into paid model APIs.
Yeah, what do you guys think about that?
You caught the exact trap, and the numbers back you up. Luna's sticker says $1 in, 6 out. Cheapest rated model on the board. But it burns about 130 million tokens to run the full index, over twice the median. So the cost per task lands at 21 cents while Terra does more intelligence for 55 with way less babbling. Your read that it's accidental is plausible. Sol actually got more token efficient than 5.5 this generation, so OpenAI clearly knows how to tune verbosity. Luna just didn't get that treatment yet. Until they do, sticking with 5.4 mini for the cheap tier is the rational call. And the broader lesson is the one Simon Willison nailed. Price per million tokens is a dead metric. Cost per task is the only honest number now.
Yeah, I want to go to Grok 4.5 next. It's actually a pleasant surprise for many people.
4.5 is the pleasant surprise for a simple reason. It's the efficiency king of the whole field at 31 cents a task, which is roughly a third of Sol and a fraction of Fable, while still landing a 54 on the intelligence index. So it's within a point of Terra, and Grok's own fans will tell you that at that price, the benchmark gap basically stops mattering. The two catches worth naming. Its context tops out at 500k, half of what everyone else is offering now, and its published agentic benchmarks are thinner than Sol's or Fable's, so you're trusting it on less independent data. But for cost-efficient near-frontier agent work, it genuinely earns the surprise. It's the one model here that competes on price without embarrassing itself on capability.
So I think Grok 4.5, it's actually pretty good, especially for the price. It's even less than what Terra and Luna and even GLN 5.2 cost. So I think many people give it a chance.
Yeah, Grok 4.5 is the quiet value story of the month, and the data backs your take. It scores 54 on the index, 1 point behind Terra, but runs the whole thing at 31 cents a task, which makes it the efficiency king among rated models, and it hits exactly the median token count, so no verbosity games inflating the real cost. The decoder's line was basically that it's so cheap the benchmark gaps stop mattering for most workloads. I can't speak to the GLN 5.2 comparison. That one's not in my data, so I won't fake a number. The two honest caveats: the 500k context window is half of what everyone else ships, and its independent agentic benchmarks are thinner than Sol's or Fable's. But for cost-efficient near-frontier agent work, it's a completely rational pick.
Yeah, I think Elon on X said that a million context window is coming for that. So I don't think that's gonna be too long. And from where they were just a few months ago, just a couple weeks ago, all the way down to the bottom of the index chart, they have come a long way in a short amount of time. So that was quite impressive.
Elon posted that, then the one real structural knock on Grok basically has an expiration date. Though I'd file it under confirmed when it ships, because his timeline promises have a well-documented relationship with actual calendars. But your bigger point stands on the numbers. XAI went from also ran to a 54 on the index, 1 point behind Terra, at 31 cents a task, and they did it faster than anyone else in this field has closed that kind of gap. That velocity is arguably more interesting than the score itself. If they keep this slope, the next Grok isn't competing with Terra, it's competing with Sol. The thing I'd still want before crowning them is independent agentic benchmarks, because that's where their published data is thinnest.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to have your own data center and your own model. And it also help a lot after they acquire Cursor with all those developers' data and coding data.
That vertical integration is the real strategic story with Grok, and it explains the price. Owning the data center means XAI isn't paying anyone else's compute margin, so that 31 cents a task efficiency isn't just a subsidy. Some of it is structural. And the Cursor acquisition closes the loop. They get a live stream of real developer coding behavior, which is exactly the training signal that's hardest to buy and most useful for agentic coding. The one caution I'd hold is that the data flywheel is a 2 to 3 year advantage, not a this quarter one. And if the million token context Elon promised actually lands, that removes the single biggest limitation anyone can name against it right now.
The takeaway is that there isn't one winner anymore. There are models winning different jobs. Fable still owns the hardest reasoning and repo work. Sol is the strongest agentic option and a real upgrade over 5.5. Terra looks like the sensible default, and Grok 4.5 is the price performance surprise. Luna needs its token appetite put on a diet, while Muse Spark is interesting less for today's benchmarks than for Meta finally entering the paid API fight. And the metric that matters now isn't price per token. It's cost per completed task.
Yeah, I'm just happy that it's no longer a two-horse race. We have at least, 4 contenders.
4 contenders means the number 1 slot now costs 3 times as much per task to win by a single index point, and that pricing pressure only exists because there's somewhere else to go. A year ago, Anthropic and OpenAI could both charge $10 in and $50 out at the top without blinking. Now Sol undercuts Fable at half the token price and Grok's sitting at 31 cents a task, so the whole field has to justify its premium. That's the real developer win. Not any single model, but the fact that no one can coast anymore. The two stragglers matter too, because meta charging for the first time means even the open weight side is now in the priced fight. Good for anyone building, bad for anyone hoping to keep margins fat.
Oh, by the way, we forgot about Google. Don't count Google out. Their model, it's actually being delayed for another month. So we'll see when Gemini 3.5 Pro come out.
Right. Google is the missing contender, not a defeated one. Gemini 3.5 Pro's delays have cost Google the launch week narrative, but capability matters more than punctuality once developers actually get their hands on it. If it arrives strong, this becomes a 5-lab race, which is much healthier than the 2-horse market we were staring at a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it has to come out strong. I think that's why it's delayed. Look at a Grok 4.5. I don't think Google can beat the price that Grok offers. So if it can't do that, then it has to compete on the top level. At least it has to be competing with 5.6 Sol, even though it cannot, get to the Fable level, which I would suspect it couldn't.
Fair read on the delay, though I'd hold one caveat. A slip usually signals trouble finishing as often as it signals sandbagging for a bigger number, so delayed because it's strong is the optimistic interpretation, not the only one. But the strategic box you're drawing is right. Google can't win on price against Grok's 31 cents a task, and it can't win on open weights, so the only lane left is competing at the Sol to Fable tier on raw capability. The problem is that's the most crowded, most expensive point on the whole board to show up at. If Gemini 3.5 Pro lands at 55 or 56, it's just another Terra class option nobody was waiting for. It has to clear 59 and justify the price to matter. We'll know when artificial analysis puts a number on it. Until then, it's a release date, not a data point.
One more issue that I think Google is facing is they have the Pro model and they have the Flash model, right? But there's only those two, but they are trying to first competing on the coding arena. And then they are also trying to be a general assistant where a lot of people are actually using the Gemini apps for.
Exactly. Google has a portfolio compression problem. Pro is expected to be the frontier coder, deep reasoner, and premium assistant, while Flash has to cover everything from consumer chat to cheap, high-volume production. That leaves an enormous gap between them. Anthropic's Opus, Sonnet, and Haiku, and now OpenAI's Sol, Terra, and Luna. Let developers match capability and cost without forcing one model to be unnaturally versatile. Google may need a third, durable middle tier, because right now Flash is doing several jobs in a trench coat.
3.5 Pro really have to come out strong. That would probably be, how they can save the day with that.
A 3-tier family lets you route by job, but 2 models forces each one to be a compromise. Flash has to be the cheap tier and the fast general assistant tier at the same time, so it ends up neither cheapest nor smartest. Undercut on price by Luna, Grok, and the open weight side, outclassed on capability by anything above it. Anthropic figured out years ago that Haiku, Sonnet, and Opus each get to be honest about what they're for, and now even OpenAI's copied it with Sol, Terra, and Luna. Google's trying to serve coding, agents, and the consumer Gemini app off 2 SKUs, and that's a positioning trap, not just a capability gap. So you're right. Flash is squeezed from both sides, and 3.5 Pro has to clear 59 on its own to justify the whole lineup, because the tier below it can't carry any of the weight.
Let's wait and see what Google will bring us.